In this video, we're going to talk about how to do a one-page review. And this is something that you can do at the end of the week to do a review of the week and get some more clarity on specific issues that you were having. So what a review is all about is looking at, well, what happened, what didn't get happen. This course is all about taking action. So it's not just about, well, what were the mistakes that I made, but figuring out specifically why didn't I take action on certain things. And remember, taking action is all about feedback loops. There's things that you're naturally motivated to do. You don't need to think about, how do I motivate myself to do this? Those are the things, all those time waster things that it's like they're bad habits, but it's hard to get out of that loop. Well, all of this stuff is run by feedback loops. It's all run by the same system of those 6 emotional needs, and it's all about motivation. So the way to think about it is anything you're doing, anytime you're spending time, you have multiple options. And for each of those options you have of how to spend your time, whether you work on this project or you go on Facebook, there's 2 things to think about. It's kind of a 2-pronged attack. Number 1 is, what is the reward for doing it? What's the benefit of doing this thing? And the other thing is, what are the drawbacks? So what would stop you from doing this thing? And you need to go through each option and analyze, well, what are the kind of pros and cons of that? And that's going to show you why you're making the decision on an emotional level to take action on one thing, but not on another thing. So this box right here is going to give you a chance to look at what are the most important things that didn't happen, that didn't get done, and then look at, well, what did I do instead? What was that decision-making process? And you can go through up top in the top half, what were the specific things in each area that I didn't do, that didn't get done, and also things that for the first time you took action on something that in the past was really tough for you. So don't just analyze your failures, also analyze your successes, and specifically successes that wouldn't have happened before, that are uncommon, that don't quite fit within the pattern or don't fully make sense yet. You should be looking at those successes and trying to figure out, well, why did that happen? What did I do differently? And then the final place is improvements. So maybe there's some pattern that you realized in one of the things where you took action on it for the first time. So maybe for the first time you took notes on a book as you were reading it, and that's a new thing for you. So that's something that you can write down of, okay, my motivation was different because of this and this and this. Another thing you could do is, well, I was motivated to do that, but then for the next book I didn't do it. Why didn't I do that? Well, maybe it's because you didn't have anywhere to put those notes. Maybe you didn't have that organization system. So that's something that you need to build in next. So an improvement could be, okay, I'm doing this part right, but I'm starting to create a negative feedback loop because I'm experiencing pain when I don't, and overwhelm when I have something and I spend a lot of time working on it, but I don't know where to put it, and I feel like I'm losing all that hard work that I put in. So an improvement would be, well, in the short term, I'm going to put all my book notes in this one place. I'm going to print them all out, and I'm going to put them in a physical format in this folder, in this file cabinet, or in this drawer of my desk. Long term, I'm going to figure out a way to organize all of this stuff. Or if you want to do it in a digital format, you would decide a certain place in my Dropbox or a certain place in my Google Drive, I'm going to put all this stuff. And then later I'll figure out a more intricate system to separate things into categories, because eventually I want to scale this thing. So that's the kind of thinking you should be doing. In the short term, how can I just make some forward progress? In the long term, what sort of system needs to be put into place so that this is going to be solved for the rest of my life, and it's going to work at scale when I'm continually doing the right thing week after week, month after month, year after year? Is this system that I have going to be able to scale with that, so that I'm not constantly having to rebuild and create newer and newer systems just to handle all of this? You can also put in ideas of, well, who could help me with this, or what kind of research should I do? So this sort of review is a great process to get into, so that you're creating a feedback loop of what you plan out at the beginning of the week and then what worked and what didn't, because this is going to allow you to focus on where are the key issues, where are the key leaks, where things are falling through the cracks. and they're not getting done. Action is not being taken. Why is that happening? So you can start to focus on that and take this massive information, all these things, especially if you're not used to planning. This is really going to come into handy. Once you're planning all the time and you're doing one pagers for planning individual projects and planning out your week, you'll probably find that reviews are not as necessary and you can just fit them into the other ways that you work. But at the beginning, when you're just starting out and you're not very comfortable with, for example, doing your one pager plans for individual projects, this is a great way to get all that information in one place and pay attention to those feedback loops and then what improvements you can make to improve those feedback loops. Again, remember, it's not just about why are you doing something, but why are you not doing something. So part of that could be a fear. What kind of fears are associated with doing something that cause you to not do it? So you can write those things down and then think about, well, is that fear even real? Does it make sense? And how could I overcome that fear? Or how could I front load this and make it so important that I just make sure it gets done? So if something, for whatever reason, you didn't give it a high enough priority the first week, the second week you can say to yourself, this is the first thing I'm doing on Monday morning, and I'm not going to let another day go by until it's finished. I'm not going to try to do any other project until it gets finished. I'm not going to check my email. I'm not going to check my phone. I'm going to put it on airplane mode. Nothing's going to happen until I get this one thing done. So sometimes that's the kind of drastic action you need to take. But if you don't do a review, it's very easy for something to not get done the first week, fall through the cracks, never get it even on the schedule in the second week. And by the third week, it's like it never happened. And you may not pick back up on that issue for another few months or even a year. So what you want to do with a review is prevent that kind of thing from happening. Prevent any new learning that you have or new realization you have from getting implemented by doing a painstaking review where you make sure that nothing's falling through the cracks. Because if you make a mistake or if you fail to implement something and a year goes by, that has a huge cost. And so part of making sure that there's no information leaks from when you consume information, when you have a realization or you identify a mistake that you're making, you want to make sure that that information, that learning never leaks out. And if it's not memorized, it's got to be on paper somewhere where you're getting spaced repetitions on it. So your schedule in reality is just a spaced repetition system to tell you what's important, to remind you of what's important so that you always have a single place you can go to and decide, okay, I don't know what to do right now. What's next on the list? What's important to do right now? And be able to refresh your mind very quickly. So that's why it's very important to have things in one place. And by writing these things down physically on paper, it forces you to focus on one thing and really do the thinking and not get distracted by fancy toys, fancy technology. Really just focus on creating this thinking habit. Because as you do this every single week, week in, week out, it's going to become very easy, and your way of thinking is going to be shaped by these categories and this way of breaking down problems, breaking down projects into their separate pieces. And as you develop the ability to do that, you're not going to need these frameworks as much. It's still valuable to do them, but instead of spending maybe an hour on it or an hour and a half, it's going to take you 5, 10, 15 minutes. And sometimes you can skip a week and just use the previous week. Sometimes you can plan out multiple weeks at a time. It really depends on what specifically you're doing. But the point is, by doing this every single week, it's going to train your brain to think more logically, to think more strategically about how to solve problems and implement everything that you're learning, both from books and video courses and blogs and audiobooks and podcasts and everything else, but also just learning from your own mistakes and eventually getting to the point where you know how to get yourself to take action on anything. You understand what motivates you. You understand how to get everything aligned so everything makes sense emotionally, and you can predict that it's going to get done. You no longer have to worry about things like feedback loops or motivation as much because you're just in the flow, you're in the groove, and things are happening. It's at the beginning stages where this stuff is the most important. So if you're thinking, well, I don't know if I have enough time to do this, this sounds like a lot of work. Well, it's an investment that you're making in your future. It's going to take more work in the beginning, but eventually it's going to be second nature. It's going to be very easy, and you're going to enjoy it because you're going to see how much more action that you're taking just by doing this simple 15-minute to half-hour habit each week. So it's really important to make sure you're not just doing individual plans for projects and planning out your week, but also doing a review so that you're getting a sense of how much progress you're making. That's another huge thing, is people just don't remember how much they've achieved over the week. So what that prevents you from doing is creating positive feedback loops. If you don't remember the success you've had, you're not going to feel motivated and feel confidence from all that success. People often don't remember their successes because our brains delete so much, and the more you're in the flow, the easier it is to forget all that you've accomplished. So doing a review is also a really great way to store up all the best memories you've had during the week, all the things that you accomplished, all the new realizations you had, all the great times you had. Put them all in one place, and it's a great way to also celebrate everything that's happened during the week and just kind of get a highlight reel of everything that's happened. Because when you do that, you build a positive feedback loop where it's like, okay, all the learning I'm doing, all the extra work that I'm doing, all the planning that I'm doing, all the accelerated learning techniques that I'm implementing, they're all paying off, and you're getting all these additional rewards, all these additional benefits because everything's working. A lot of times people will think, just because they don't remember what's happened, that they're failing when they're actually making progress and doing significantly better than they were just a few weeks or a month ago. So that's another really important reason to do these reviews. You need to make sure that you're remembering and seeing all your successes and failures clearly, and you're seeing your progress. Another great thing about these reviews is that because they're on a single page, once you're done with a Moleskine or whatever notebook you're using, you can rip these out, put them all in one place. Or what I do is you scan these in, and then digitally you can just drag and drop them all into one location. And eventually you'll have years and years and years of these planning, and they're all in the one pagers, and they're all in the exact same place. You can print them all out and look over them, get a really cool view of everything that you've worked on, how you were thinking about things over the span of years. It's in the exact same format. It's really cool to be able to see the progress of your thinking. And when you have a standardized format like this, it makes it a lot easier to organize all this stuff and then go back to it later on and get spaced repetitions, see how much progress you're making. And each time you go back and look at those memories, look at how much progress you're making, how much you've achieved, that's going to reinforce those positive feedback loops that are going to continue to keep you even more motivated on the right track. So if you find yourself just unable to build these feedback loops, unable to build motivation, one of your problems might be you're not doing enough review. You're not recording all your successes enough. You're not recording your mistakes and the improvements you can make on those mistakes, because as you do that, it's just going to make you more effective, and strategically, you're just going to make fewer mistakes, and you're going to be on point and in the groove more of the time. So it's really important to go back and look at things to build those feedback loops and avoid making the same mistakes over and over and over again.